Hey there everyone, welcome back to GameVine, and my name is David, and again I'm talking about another Fast 5 list. Now this list is all about racing board games. Now when you think racing, you might think of cars, and yes, there are some pretty good board games about cars and racing in that fashion, and I have a few on my honorable mention list, but I really wanted to shine on games that have a racing mechanism in them, but isn't necessarily a car game. I like different type of themes, and a racing mechanism is one of my favorite types of gameplay when it comes to board games necessarily. So I am a bit biased on this list, and it was kind of hard to pick out certain games, so I had to leave out a few. And again, on Fast 5, it doesn't necessarily put what I think my top 5 are, but I think the top 5 are for you, the fans out there, to get into this hobby. So if you want to find a good racing game, look at this list and you'll find a good one. And as always on these lists, I only have 1 minute to talk about these games. So let me tell you my honorable mentions, and then we'll get on to said list. Now, the first one I have a physical copy of, and I'm not going to talk about too much because it's an honorable mention, but this is The Hare and the Tortoise. This is made by Yellow, and it's along the Fairy Tale book line series. And this is where you are physically bidding on two animals, or maybe one, and doubling down on that, and trying to help that animal win. Now, it had a whole bunch of fairy tale animals. Production is great. This is probably my favorite so far in the line. So if this intrigues you, go out and find it. The second honorable mention I don't have, and this I've played only Formula D and or Day. I'm also going to kind of shoehorn Thunder Alley in there. That's a really, from what I hear, a good like NASCAR simulation, but in the same fashion of Formula Day, where you're rolling dice and you're racing cars, and you see the pictures right here, and that is your typical racing game. Now, I've played one of these games, and it is fun, and it was kind of hard not to put it on the list, but again, when I do Fast 5, I like to do different types of games, and I might revisit a topic like racing again, and maybe this might make that list, but until that time, it sits here on the honorable mention. Now, let's get on to number 5. Let's go. So, alright, so number 5, the first game that I'm going to talk about on this list is Race to the North Pole. It's right there in the name. Now, this is a winter type themed game that I played a prototype of at the last year's Gen Con. Now, I ran into the designer. I actually have a video on the channel if you want to look it up. It's really cool. The thing that intrigues me about this game is that the board actually spins. There's another game that's a racing game called Realm of Wonders. I'm not going to say too much about that, but it also spins. But I like the way that this one does because it has this like kind of clear film underneath the actual spinning board, and different things kind of happen. This is a really cutthroat game, but also satisfies that kind of racing aspect. So if you are into racing games and you like going after your friends, and you like the kind of winter theme, you know, sled dogs and that kind of thing, and even Santa, he's on the box there, then this game is for you. I can't recommend it enough. It actually has been produced since I played at Gen Con at the Spiel, and my time is up. But you can get this game if you are interested, and I would say you should. So, I don't have a physical copy. You were able to see photos there. If that intrigues you, go pick it up. Let's go on to number 4 right now. Let's go. Alright, so number 4 is one of my personal favorites. I love this game. It has worked in almost every scenario that I've busted out on the table. And it's kooky and zany and luck-driven, but it has a whole bunch of powers. But it really does satisfy everything that I want when it comes to board games, because I like the kooky and zany type games that really push things outside the box. And this one is called Magical Athlete. I actually have a physical copy, which this game is out of print and relatively hard to get, or you would have to pay a pretty penny to get it on the second market. Now, this game is all about 2 different phases. The first phase, you're trying to acquire a certain amount of a team of characters, depending on how many players you have, and then on the second, you're bidding for them, and you will only have a certain amount of money to do so, and then after that phase you flip over the board and then you start racing. Yes, that's where the game is really shines, because then your characters actually get to do their powers. I wish there was like an expansion to this game, but it's so easy to make your own kind of expansions because the powers on here are really one-sided and incredibly unbalanced, but I really like the way that it forms together with its luck-based mechanism of roll and move, which is my favorite roll and move game, by the way, and it does it in such a great fashion, and it's one of the few games that does it in such a good way. I think it's a nice design, so that is my number 4 racing game. I really went over the time limit by 14 seconds, so without further speak on this game, let's go on to number 3. Let's go. Okay, so number 3 is my dexterity game of the list, but it's also my car game of the list. Now, that's pretty funny, right? Now, I'm kind of cheating because I'm going to put 2 games on here. One I have the physical copy of, the second one I don't, and this is Roadsters and or Pitch Car. Now, this is a plastic kind of dexterity game that has this little ball that allows you to move your car, and Pitch Car is all wood-based, and it has these discs where you're flicking them around the table, but essentially it's the same thing with minor differences. If you really wanted me to pick one, I would say I would like Pitch Car, but as you can see, I don't have a physical copy because it's kind of expensive and it's a heavy game. This one takes the same aspect but adds this cool little Z ball and puts it in a smaller package and has plastic components, which does a good job. Now, this one had a game before it that used the Z ball called bicycles, and it's spelled really weird. And instead of cars, you had these bicycles, which, again, I would play that, but I would rather have the cars because you can actually jump over them in Roadsters. Pitch Car has a whole bunch of expansions where you can play up to like 20 people if you want, and it has like jumps and gaps and tunnels, and it's just if people see you play either one of these games, they are immediately attached, and that's why I like dexterity games, and I would say this is a racing game, wouldn't you? You're taking turns and you're trying to get around the racetrack. Well, there you go. So I went 15 seconds over on number 3 here. I'm leaving the sound off because I got feedback that it's a bit distracting, so let me know in the comments if this is okay. But now let's go on to number 2. Let's go. And number 2 on my list is, again, I don't have a physical copy, but it's in my game group and I have played it a lot. This game is called Camel Up. Now, Camel Up is a award-winning game by and by, and it deserves it, yes. And it is all about racing, but you're basically betting on this race of camels that are going to be stacking up on each other. The components are amazing, and the pyramid is pretty cool. Sometimes it's a little lackluster, but for the most part it does its job. It now has an expansion to Camel Up that gives the game a camera and even more things to kind of bet on and get money via different things there. So it's going to continue to grow, and it induces so much laughter because this is the most random game on this list. I can say that easily because I've seen crazy things happen. I've seen last place just completely jump into first place and ruin everybody's plan except for one person that was betting on them from the beginning. And that's what I kind of like about racing games. You really just kind of go into racing games with the mindset of this is going to be fast, frantic, zany, fun. Let's just go into this game and go at it full force and see who wins. So that is my number 2. That is Camel Up. Now let's go on to my number 1, and you can find out what this is. I said before that this isn't really a personal list, but this is my favorite racing game of all time. What is it? Well, let me show you. Let's go to number 1. So number 1 is my favorite racing game of all time. Now I know I said this list isn't quite personal, but this one is. So this one is all about pirates sailing around the island of Jamaica. Now, this game is made by GameWorks, and it is highly produced and absolutely gorgeous. All the way to the from the pirate ships, which are kind of like a nice plastic miniature, all the way up to the cards that are in your hand that make a art panorama, which is displaying what the pirates are actually doing in this race as they're going along this around the island. Now, the only gripe I have production-wise would be the rule book. It's like one of those pull-out rule books. It's got cool to bloom art on it, but they wanted it to be like a map. I get it, but I'd rather have a book. But beyond that, this game is perfect when it comes to components. The racing aspect is super simple once you explain to the players how to manage their food and gold and how to do so as they race around this island. You are off. And this is one of the games where I try to play every time when I'm in the group, because it's light. I like light games, I like heavy games, but this is one of my favorite racing and or light games that we can just bust out in 30 minutes and maybe 45 if it's a larger player game. But it's just so much fun. I mean, the cards are gorgeous, and the way that you play them, you have to have some kind of tactical and or strategy of options to do certain things. You might want to go backwards, you might want to go forward, you might not have enough to feed people, you're trying to get curses off yourself and or cool little weapons to double your cannon power to fight other people. It has pretty much everything that you would want in a racing game, but it does it with pirates and boats. So of course you could race if you want with a car and a whole bunch of cars going side by side and around in a circle, but why not do it with boats that have cannons and you can blow people up and then plunder all their goods once you beat them. So that is basically what Jamaica has to offer. Again, this is my favorite of the list and favorite racing game to date. So thank you so much for watching this Fast 5 list. Tell me if your favorite made the list, and if it didn't, tell me what your favorite is down in the comments below. I would really love to hear about it. Maybe I don't know about it, and if I give it a play, I'll do a second Fast 5 for racing games and I'll make that list. So until the next time that I see you, thank you so much again everyone for watching today's video. My name is Dave, and have a great rest of your day and a great time with all that you play. I would go pick up Jamaica if I was you. It's in and out of print, so you gotta catch it at a good time to get it for a good price. But with that being said, take care everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye!